Arizona.
Mr. President, here we have a supplemental appropriations conference report, supposedly, ostensibly, to fund the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and to make sure that the men and women who are serving have the necessary equipment and wherewithal to pursue those conflicts with the utmost efficiency. So, it's business as usual in our nation's capital. It's business as usual in the Congress of the United States. Instead of legislation to fund our troops and efforts in Iraq and Afghanistan, we have a bill that includes such things as $2 million for freeze-dries, platelet, and plasma development, $35 million for the FBI to investigate mortgage fraud, predatory lending, financial fraud, and market manipulation, $13.2 million for payments to air carriers for participation in the Essential Air Service Program, and, of course, one of the remarkable acts and feats of legerdemain I've seen in my many years here, cash for clunkers. Cash for clunkers. Someone should at least attempt to explain how cash for clunkers has any relation whatsoever to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. It bribes Americans to trade in less fuel-efficient vehicles considered clunkers, despite the fact that the car could have been bought yesterday for a voucher worth up to $4,500 to the purchase of a new car that must get at least 18 miles per gallon. At least 18 miles per gallon? 18? Not 38, 18. It's supposed to, the estimate is supposed to cost about $1 billion, but some economists have declared the real cost will be between $3 and $4 billion, and I predict to you now on this floor that it'll be a lot closer to $3 to $4 billion than it will be $1 billion. A giveaway of this nature will be obviously something that will be irresistible to many. So here we are, a supplemental appropriations conference report totaling $105.9 billion. Now, the President requested $13 billion less. The Senate request was $9 billion more than the House-passed bill and $14.6 billion above the Senate-passed bill. So what we've done is we pass a bill over here, we pass a bill over there, and we add to both, to the sum of both. The conference report provides crucial funding for ongoing military, diplomatic, and intelligence operations, provides emergency funding to strengthen the response to the H1N1 influenza outbreak, expand the borrowing authority for the International Monetary Fund, and as I mentioned before, vouchers for consumers to trade in old cars for new. Old, meaning as short a time as 1 year. The majority of the conference report contains urgently needed funding for our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, as we know, our military is engaged in an effort that can and must succeed. It also contains important assistance for the government of Pakistan, including funding for the Pakistan Counterinsurgency Fund. The provision of this funding should send a message to the people of Pakistan that the United States has made a long-term commitment to stand by their side in the region and at home as they battle domestic insurgents and extremists. However, the conference report also contains billions of dollars in unrequested spending that is largely unjustified and certainly non-emergency. President Obama's message to the Congress was to keep funding focused on the needs of our troops and not to use the supplemental to pursue unnecessary spending and to keep earmarks and other extraneous spending out of the legislation. Despite the President's insistence not to include unnecessary spending in the supplemental, the conference report contains a number of earmarks and unrequested congressional program additions. I'm disappointed that the majority chose to use the supplemental as a vehicle to add billions in unrequested funding and policy proposals which should have been fully vetted and considered on their own merits, while at the same time stripping out the Senate-passed detainee photo provision offered by Senators Lieberman and Graham. Conference report is also being used by the appropriators as a backdoor for funding, quote, base requirements. House allocations for 2010, commonly referred to as 302B allocations, cut defense spending by $3.5 billion, it reduced international affairs funding by $3.2 billion. In other words, the sleight of hand of adding non-emergency program funding to supplemental appropriations is becoming all too familiar as a way of skirting fiscal discipline by increasing discretionary spending above congressional discretionary caps outlined in the budget resolution. In other words, Mr. President, we are continuing that unfortunately was common also in the previous administration. Again, about cash for clunkers. I mean, it's remarkable. On June 16, 2009, Citizens Against Government Waste wrote a letter to all members of the Senate stating that this provision, quote, is really another bailout for the auto industry. American taxpayers have already spent $85 billion, and we now own two automotive companies, we and the unions. Why do we need another bailout for the auto industry? The cash for clunkers provision has no place in a bill that provides emergency war funds. Mr. President, I couldn't agree with the Citizens Against Government Waste more. The Wall Street Journal wrote in a June 11, 2009 editorial, quote, Congress wants to pay you to destroy your car. As economic policy, this is dotty. It encourages Americans to needlessly destroy still useful cars and then misallocate scarce resources from another, perhaps more productive uses in order to subsidize replacement. By the same logic, we could revive the housing market by paying everyone to burn down their houses to collect the insurance money and build new ones. What this is all about, it's really intended to help Detroit out of recession by subsidizing new car purchases. Maybe that's why the President and CEO of the Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers wrote asking all senators to support this program, as well as the United Auto Workers legislative director, who called this provision, quote, the single most important step Congress can take right now to assist the auto industry. Haven't Congress done enough for the auto industry? When is $85 billion not enough for the auto industry? Lastly, this provision is a lemon. According to a June 13, 2000 article from the LA Times, it stated, critics say the improvement is required in the trade as little as 1 mile per gallon for certain light trucks. In other words, you trade in your old light truck and buy another one that's 1 mile per gallon more fuel efficient. Swap for those who so you can swap one gas guzzler for another. So for $1 billion, this provision doesn't achieve the environmental goals its authors set